Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. It's your DC Comics Spotlight for the week of January 30th, 2024. Thought it was an okay week. Kind of a smaller week in a lot of ways. I'm not sure. I think this might be the fifth Tuesday of the month. That's typically what happens. You get a lot of annuals and specials and what have you. So, yeah, we have that this week. There's a couple of annuals. There's one of those DC cover issues. We have the anthology DC Power, focusing on African American characters, persons of color characters, for Black History Month, which is actually February, but it's out here on last couple days of January. So yeah, we'll talk about them, and it was an okay week. There was some. I feel like in a way this week just wasn't for me. Not that there was any technically bad comics, but it just didn't really speak to me. And it wasn't, one of those situations like it is sometimes where, like, man, I feel like it's such a chore to read these books. But nothing really got me excited, like I didn't read anything and go, oh my God, that was so good. I loved it kind of thing. So I don't know. How do you feel about the week, Rocky?
Oh, there's only one that stood out, and that was the one I was looking forward to the most, and that was Batman Offworld #3, and that it entertained me, so it that put me through to the week. We got Beastworld wrapping up, so I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on that. And after a big revelation at the end of issue 5. And, Alan Scott, the next issue of Alan Scott, I think was interesting, getting more of an origin of the Crimson Flame. And we get a Trinity Special that we'll be talking about, which is a collection of the Wonder Woman backup of young Trinity with the John Kent and Damian Wayne. But beyond that, I thought it was, I guess it was, it was all right. But I kind of share your sentiment that there was maybe for some reason, maybe I was just expecting a little bit more overall. But there were some good comics to talk about, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, I feel like, man, I said this a lot lately. We're getting like feels like a regurgitation of stories or story ideas that we've seen before. So I don't know what the answer. It's not like they're the same old writers. They're new writers. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of tough, but anyway, we'll kick it off with the aforementioned Batman Offworld. This is issue number 3. The Galaxy's Most Dangerous Alien, written by Jason Aaron, pencils by Doug Mahnke, inks by Jaime Mendoza, colors by David Barron, letters by Troy Petrie. So this has been just a heck of a wild ride since it started. And, I said this when we were talking about the second issue. This is issue 3. But I said this when we were talking about the second issue, how it felt a little bit, to me, Batman had escaped from the War Storm slave ship or whatever you want to call it. And he was kind of going out in the galaxy to learn more skills. That sort of took me by surprise. I had thought that based on what we saw in the first issue, the entirety of the story was going to take place on that War Stormer ship. And basically we were going to see Batman, build up enough skills to be able to beat the captain of the War Stormer ship. And then, we'll go from there. So instead, the second issue was really focused on almost like a jailbreak type situation, where they escape from the ship at the end. And now they're going to go out there and they're going to figure out, how to get Batman back home. Again, at least that's sort of what I expected it to be. Again, Jason Aaron surprises me. We saw Batman land on this world, and it was a world that had previously been kind of in a similar situation to the ship, like a lot of slaves, like a mining corporation had land there. They had mined the planet for a lot of its resources, and unfortunately, they kind of left the planet a mess, so to speak. Planet wasn't in good shape. Just a bad situation. And those survivors that were left were sort of left to fend for themselves on a planet that was once, a nice place to live and has now been kind of stripped, as it were. And they're being hunted by these sort of mechanical type wolves that are living there. So yeah, an interesting situation. So Batman, crash lands on this planet. What's her name? I want to say Ione, the Tamarian that Batman had teamed up with. She's out looking for Batman, not sure where he crash landed. during the rescue mission or the escape from the ship. And it seemed like, okay, well, Batman's there. Now he's got a new challenge. This guy's going to develop more skills. He's going to go take on these sort of cybernetic wolves that are feeding on the lesser beings of this planet, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. Instead, what happens is right from the start, Batman does save them, but we're told it's not shown to us. We're just told. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It felt like a little bit of a missed opportunity. Like they could have talked about Batman. They could have talked about him, fighting the wolf rather than just telling us how it all went down. But I guess the reason they didn't do that is they wanted to sort of focus on the other part of the story, I guess, which is Batman deciding, okay, well, I do need to go and take out this slaver who was, the same kind of alien that defeated me in Gotham and what have you. So yeah, he goes back to the ship, and that's exactly what he does. He takes out the captain of the ship, talks about how much he's learned while fighting these aliens. He's learned all of their vulnerabilities and what have you. And so now he's going to go and take them out. And so I really appreciated that, but the story felt unfinished, and Batman sort of expresses that as well, right? Like he's like, why, I came out here to learn how to defeat these types of aliens so I can go back and defeat this alien of the same type that's in Gotham. And so now I should be ready to go home. I've learned what I need to learn. Why does it feel unfinished? Well, because Batman realizes there's still a sense of injustice out here, right? Like he's taken out a cog in the machine, but the mining corporation that's enslaving these people, the mining corporation that was responsible for stripping that planet and leaving its indigenous people vulnerable, like that corporation, that entity, and the two evil-looking twins that we meet at the end, the Black Sun twins, Black Sun Mining Company, I guess is what it's called. It's basically foreshadowed that he's going to have to go and defeat them now, and they look pretty scary. They look pretty gross. Great art throughout by Doug Mahnke. The colors by David Barron are really, really strong as well. So, yeah, I mean, I was a big fan of this. I could nitpick it. Like I said, there's things that I wish we had been shown and not just told to happen. But, I guess, space constraints are a thing. They probably just don't have enough pages to show everything they wanted. But this is really strong. The wolf that Batman has a sort of a sidekick after he defeats the alpha wolf is an interesting and fun character, a great visual. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing where you read this comic and you go, man, that was a lot of fun. Really entertaining, great art. This is what comics should be. I just got done talking about how redundant a lot of DC stories feel right now. This does not feel redundant. This does not feel like a story we've had before. I mean, it's Batman out in space, and I get it, right? Like, I'm being a little bit hypocritical. I give Zdarsky all kinds of crap for Batman jumping from the moon. It's probably more realistic to have Batman jump, from the moon than to have him out doing what he's doing in Jason Aaron's series. But, whatever. That's my prerogative to be a little bit hypocritical. But anyway, what'd you think of this issue, Rocky?
I liked it. I think Jason Aaron did subvert my expectations a little bit, all in a good way. One of the characters that I really liked the setup in the first issue. I think that character of Punchbot, that little robot that helped to teach Batman how to fight all these different alien races and tell Batman their weak spots. In addition to Ione also helping him out. It's nice to see Batman return to that ship, fulfilling an obligation or a promise he made to himself to defeat the captain of that ship, that evil captain that had all the slaves and slave workers all in essentially glorified employment slash slavery to the Black Sun Mining Company, and Batman going back to take out that captain in just glorious fashion. Ion's on the planet, and I love the opening scene where Ion's actually expecting Batman to be dead. I mean, she's actually apologizing to looking for do you know where Batman is? You guys probably ate him. If you did, that's okay. I can understand, but she's not thinking Batman's going to even have survived landing on the planet. But not only did he land on the planet, but he thrived, and he's now the new alpha male of this giant wolf that she sees on the hill. And you could almost see that she's dripping wet with anticipation of the sex she anticipates to have with Batman that she attempts to have later on. I mean, she's just blown away by his masculinity here. This is alpha male Batman in all of his glory, and true to form, Batman doesn't really appreciate how the effect that he has on Ione. He doesn't really understand his effect that he seems to have on women. It seems to surprise him at times. But I just love the work here. And Doug Mankey, his art is just fantastic. Mendoza's inks just complement his art so well. This is, I love the artist. I love the action. And this is Batman keeping a promise to himself. I mean, he could go back to Gotham. He's learned how to fight different alien races. He could go back to Gotham, and Ione is right. She's expecting him to leave after he defeats the captain on the ship. But no, he waits and he says, "Okay, now tell me about this Black Sun Mining Company." Because Batman, when he sees something's wrong, it doesn't matter whether he's in Gotham City or any other major city on Earth. The fact is, he knows that he can do something to stop the tyranny and the crime. Crime is a superstitious and cowardly lot, whether it's on Earth or in space. And Batman knows that, so he's going to take out the Black Sun Mining Company. And just how you get there and the progression, Jason Aaron has done such a good job elevating Batman to being a force in the galaxy. He's made a name for himself. He's just been in space, I think, in 2 to 3 weeks in story time, I think. And he's already made a name for himself in the galaxy, which is so cool because I remember Wonder Woman had her 5 issues story in space, and Superman's made a name for himself in World. And it's nice to see, you don't often see Batman space stories, but we're getting that here and to great effect. And again, 3 issues in, I like the pacing. I actually like the fact that we didn't need to necessarily see the scenes that maybe you wanted to see. Jason Aaron is keeping the story fast paced because, and it feels like it's fast paced, but I feel that there's enough going on that I can fill in the blanks with my own headcanon while still enjoy even cooler scenes. It's like Jason Aaron is giving us the best scenes that he has in his head, and he's encouraging the reader for us to fill in the blanks, and he's not. This is not a decompressed tale. This is a fast-paced tale, as you would expect Batman, because Batman is kicking ass, taking names. He wants to get the job done and get back to Earth. But goddamn, Batman can't stop being Batman just because he's in space. And he figures while he's there, goddamn it, I'll take out the Black Sun Mining Company. But these Black Sun brothers, they seem to have some sort of whispering ability. They seem to be metahumans that have some kind of power. So they're going to be a wild card that Batman is not prepared for. And so it's going to be interesting to see what these next 3 issues hold. But I'm loving this. I wish this was a 12-issue series because I think it's only 6. But no, I thought this was definitely one of the candidates for pick of the week for me.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the relationship between Ione and Batman because, yeah, she does. She's out there. She's lonely. She does try to be vulnerable. He doesn't out and out reject her, but it's almost like he's asexual, right? Like she's used to guys probably falling all over her, and he kind of resists her advances. He's just so matter of fact. He's about the job. He's about the mission. And she feels rebuffed, later she's like, "Oh, you want to talk about her feelings?" And she gives him a right hook. She doesn't agree with what he's doing. Like, you escaped the War Stormer ship. Why are you going back? And when he infiltrates and he's supposed to be opening the hangar for her, she's like, "Okay, well, be sure and let me know if you're dead so I can turn the hell around." Kind of tongue in cheek because, how would he be able to let her know if he was dead? But yeah, just fantastic, that relationship. We'll see how that develops, if it develops anymore, with Batman's next part of the mission to take out the Black Sun twins. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. Up next, we have a Power Girl Uncovered. title. It's basically a bunch of Power Girl covers, like we've seen in the past. That DC does these from time to time, mostly variant covers. But there are some other covers that aren't necessarily variants that are really well known and popular covers that maybe people just don't have a chance to own, like the Amanda Connor cover for Power Girl #1 from back in the day. So there's not really much to say about this. Yeah, there's Joe Staton from way back in the day, early '80s, his first ever cover for Power Girl, which he had her first series. So yeah, I mean, I'm probably never gonna own the Adam Hughes, class. I think it's JLA or JSA classified issue where she's flying on her back in a super famous pose, whatever. But yeah, that one right there. If you're watching on YouTube, very famous cover, very sought after. So yeah, I mean, I could go out and buy it, but it's not a priority for me. So if you're like me and you like that cover and you're never really going to go and own it, here's your chance. But at the same time, I sort of feel like, well, if you like these pictures of Power Girl, what's to stop you from just having a digital copy as like the wallpaper on your computer? Do you really want to go and buy this and then stick it in a box and then you don't see it anyway? So I don't know. I have mixed feelings on these uncovered titles. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Yeah, I got, I've people who've listened to us before know that I go on a variant cover rant every now and then. I think it's a little bit crazy that I get frustrated when the best covers are relegated to a ratio variant and you got to spend, comic books are expensive enough. And to have to spend $25 to $50 to get these ratio variants with these great covers is really sad. That's why they're doing that. That's why they print this so that you can get the covers within the contents. But it just seems, frankly, if you're going to do that, then why don't make this issue should be a giveaway? You should. I think they should give these issues away, or they should be $1 or $2. They shouldn't be. They shouldn't be. I mean, the entire uncovered should not be a $5.99 price tag or even $4.99. They should be. These are redundancies. These have been published before. So reward reader loyalty and speculator loyalty by making these less expensive because it's all reprinted material. But they don't do that, and that's just me ranting a little bit. But again, who doesn't love a gorgeously drawn Power Girl, and particularly when men and women draw Power Girl embracing her wonderful chest and showing it off, because that's the best. And my personal favorite is Joe Staton, only because I do actually have that issue. I got the reading copy. It's a reading copy, and it's probably only like a 4.0 condition, but I love it. It's nice to know that I bought it in a book. I think when I first bought it, it was 10 cents back in the day, and it was in terrible shape when I bought it, and I still have it in the same shape that I bought it in. So in my mind, it's like a 9.8, but it's good. Good memories, and Power Girl's a great character, and it's good to see that DC's doing this to show some love to the character. And I'm still pleased that she has her own ongoing titles. So yeah, not bad.
I will say as one thing that maybe she has her own series right now. I think it's selling okay. So I feel like DC's doing this at a time when they think, she's a popular character, but a lot of that has to do with her aesthetic, right? Her look. They've changed her look a little bit. They've tried to change it over the years. In fact, one of the variant covers in here, one of the covers, I don't even think it was a variant, World's Finest, back when World's Finest was set on Earth 2 with Power Girl and Huntress. And you can see when they try to change both of their costumes. And it's George Perez. And it's a great cover, but the costume it doesn't look like Power Girl. So one of the things that I'm struck by when you buy this, again, or you take a look at it or whatever, the fact that they're trying to make all these changes with Power Girl, but yet I look at these covers and I remember the stories of when Power Girl was Power Girl, before these changes. I like that character. And so I think it could be construed as calling sort of negative attention on the changes that they're making. You know what I'm saying? Like, why were they necessary? Whatever.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I don't know. She's a problematic character. DC doesn't seem to know how to use her correctly.
There's always that interesting sort of disconnect, but it's commercial reality. Sexiness sells. So they want to
Yep.
cater to the Pyrian fanboy like myself and yourself, while at the same time they want to elevate the character and move the character forward, and that involves maybe a little bit more of a feminist approach to the character. I understand that, and so this is DC's way of maybe trying to cater to both worlds. I mean, it's it is.
It doesn't work. You got to just pick a direction. Pick a direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we talked about it. We've talked about it a lot with the Power Girl series. I think so many people confuse her with Supergirl. That's where the trouble, really starts. In my mind, retire Supergirl for a while. Have Supergirl be the character that's in space. Leave Power Girl on Earth. But anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Batman and Robin 2024 Annual Number 1. Written by Joshua Williamson, Howard Porter's the artist, Rain Barretto on colors, Steve Wands on letters. We've talked in the past about Howard Porter and how he was in some sort of accident and had to teach himself how to draw, and he's still an amazing artist, but his style is completely different. Like if you take a look at what Howard Porter's art looked like back on that JLA, that legendary JLA run by Grant Morrison, it looks nothing like what we're getting here. And that's even to say that Porter's art has really evolved in the last couple of years, even more so. It's become less frenetic in a way, but just as sort of detailed and esoteric. Like it used to be, you'd see him on Flash, and there would be, a lot of lines, a lot of, sharp points and what have you, and a lot of not necessarily detail, because they were sort of extraneous lines just for the sake of that was the style that he wanted to put forth. And now when you look at this, you don't see as many sharp points. You see, a lot more curves. The art looks softer, but there's still all kinds of, extraneous lines, and a little bit of inconsistency. And again, it's just not for me. And when I really noticed it and had to go back and look at the art from a couple of the previous pages, and then I went back and looked at Howard Porter on Flash, and I went back and looked at Night Terrors. That was another series that he did recently. And you could definitely see an evolution of his art over time. I don't know if he's able to go faster with this, because it's just a much looser style. And that's never a style that I'm really going to enjoy. But if you go to the page where they're in the car, or Bruce and Damian are in the car and they're driving to the campground, you can really see what I mean when you look at, that page right there. So if you just look at the faces, like the first three panels, Damien's eyes are not, they're not even really rendered, right? It's just like an empty spot with no pupil, and it's just white. And then on the last one, all of a sudden he's got like these giant black outlines over his eye. Like I don't understand that choice. And when you look at Bruce's face, he's just got a couple of like black dashes for eyes. I'm not sure what is trying to be done here. And then when you beyond the characters' faces, when you just look like around the car, especially in the top panel, there's just all these lines. There's just all these lines and black splotches and what have you. Like I don't know what that's trying to convey. I guess a sense of foreboding or darkness, or it is kind of a dark story. But I don't know, this art. I'm having a hard time enjoying stories with Howard Porter art, because it's just not the type of art that I like. And I kind of chalked it up on Night Terrors as well. Night Terrors wasn't a particularly strong story. It's horror, not my favorite genre, and maybe that's what it is. But I think I would, not that this story was original by Joshua Williamson at all, and we'll get to that. But there was enough here in the story. I think I would have enjoyed it had I enjoyed the art. But I didn't enjoy the art. And then with the story being kind of derivative, this was just a miss for me. So just real quickly, the story itself, Batman and Robin are patrolling Gotham City, as they often do. And they come across the twins, the same twins that we saw recently in the pages of Nightwing, the Double Dare twins. And supposedly they were going to be, going on vacation. That's what they had told Nightwing. They're going to be getting out of town. Apparently, that meant going to Gotham to pull off a couple heists to then have money to go on vacation. But Batman and Robin foil that. But Batman hears it and he thinks, oh, that's a good idea. We should go on vacation. And so they go on vacation to this campground where a bunch of people have been reported missing. It's not clear. It's sort of hinted at the end that maybe this was Batman's plan all along because he knew about all these missing people. But what happens is when they get to the campground, a force field comes up around them, and this woman named Roulette is doing the big game hunting, right? Like, again, we've seen this story hundreds of times where people are paying huge amounts of money to hunt the world's most dangerous prey, which is man himself. And of course, Batman and Robin, they save the day. Roulette gets captured and what have you. And that's a story. So kind of derivative, nothing original here. Where I really had a problem, though, is I don't care if Batman's going on his honeymoon. I don't care if Batman's going to a nudist colony. Bruce Wayne never goes anywhere without his costume, his utility belt, his stuff, right? And they go to this campground, and then after they realize they're trapped, they take like inventory of what they have. They're like, oh, we have this, we have that, whatever. I said no work tools, but Damian snuck in some stuff, and Bruce himself brought a few batarangs. Yeah, that would never happen. That would never, ever, 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 ever happen. Batman is never going to go somewhere with that. How many times have we been told and shown in recent years that Bruce Wayne is the mask and Batman is who he is? So you're telling me he's going to go somewhere without his Batman stuff? I'll never believe that. I'll never believe that in a million years. Never, ever. So that's where it was really like, yeah, I'm not buying this. I'm not buying it. So between that and the art, this was below average for me. I didn't really care for it. So I don't know. Maybe you enjoyed it more than I did, Rocky. What'd you think?
I did enjoy it more than you did. I even enjoyed the art, and I'll be blunt. I've never been a fan of Howard Porter, even back in his prime before his accident. But I actually think that one of the reasons why I liked his art better in this issue than what it normally is because I'm used to seeing Howard Porter's art with very bright colors, with great big bright colors, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that in his prime. I'm an outlier in that regard, I admit. But frankly, I like the darker tones here. I like the darker tones. I think for me, it's the more subdued, like darker colors that I think complements Porter's particular style here. And, you pointed out in the car drive, some of your comments about I share, you're right about your commentary about the shading in the eyes and what have you, but it didn't bother me. It didn't bother me because I think at the very least, the coloring with the art was consistent throughout, and I could still get into the story, which I quite loved. I didn't quite think it to the extent that you did, that Batman never goes unprepared. Part of me thought it was maybe kind of cool because it planted the seed that maybe Batman intentionally just, did set this up to test Damian, to give them something to do, father and son, because he did say to Damian in this issue that, by the way, if you don't want to go to school anymore, that's okay. Because they're getting closer, they're bonding, and the fact that Batman, just as crazy as it is, the fact that Batman might actually set up a trip for him and his son where they're taking on roulette and Bloodsport, and albeit he never knew that Bloodsport was going to be there. I thought that was just kind of cool, and maybe Batman didn't, but the fact that Batman might have planned it and Damian still managed. Damian just excelled and did an excellent job. There was an entire page where the reader is privy to exactly how they're limited in the tools and supplies they have. And I kind of like that because they're more challenged now because they don't have their costume, they don't have their usual supplies. And also, I want to give a shout out to Howard Porter. I don't know if it was his idea to design Roulette's costume, but Roulette is a common villain in Birds of Prey. She's usually very sexy. She has like exotic like tattoos, and she usually wears a bright red dress, looks gorgeous. But now she's got sort of the way she's rendered here. She's sort of like she's a cross between like almost like an evil Laura Croft with almost a cowboy western sort of look, with that cool sort of green serpent tattoo on her right leg and her right thigh. Anyways, I really liked how Roulette was captured here, and I like seeing Bloodsport. How long ago? When's the last time we saw Bloodsport? Probably in the pages of Suicide Squad somewhere. In any event, I thought it was kind of cool to see him, and I just thought it was well done. For this is annual week, basically. It's I think the fifth week in January, like you said, and this was actually entertaining to me. I like that Williamson is doing a good job. I think, sort of giving us, sort of ignoring. I'm kind of glad he ignored Gotham War there at the beginning. There were some inconsistent portrayals of Bruce's relationship with Damian as opposed to the main title in Batman. But this Batman and Robin title, Williamson has stayed consistent with the assignment. Develop the relationship between Batman and Robin. That's the title, and that's what we're getting. And I was entertained by this. So this is probably the second candidate for pick of the week for me. So I enjoyed this.
All right, fair enough. Well, I'm glad one of us did. Up next, we have the Trinity Special. There's a few stories in here. Some of them are reprints. I think all but one are reprints of backups that we had in the pages of Wonder Woman. So we have World's Finest Part 1. Tom King's the writer. Belen Ortega's the artist. Alejandro Sanchez on colors. Clayton Cowell on letters. Again, it's Damian and John Kent babysitting Lizzie, as they call her, Wonder Woman's daughter. And then we have another of those stories where Damian and John have sort of taken over for their father. Their fathers are they're babysitting, and that was World's Finest Part 3. I guess it jumps from 1 to 3. I'm not sure why it does that, or maybe am I? Does it have all 3? Am I missing one? No. The first story is Part 1 of World's Finest. The second one is Part 3. Again, same creative teams, and then we get a third story, and maybe it's just oh no. So I'm sorry. We do have all 3. I didn't realize I scrolled past. Yeah. So we have the first one where they're babysitting her at Wayne Manor. Then we have one where they're babysitting her at the Fortress of Solitude, and then we have one that's set on Themyscira. So each of the characters, I guess, gets a chance to have a story in kind of their home base, if you will, their home field advantage. But again, they're all by the same creative team. We got Belen Ortega art, which is really great. Alejandro Sanchez on colors. Clayton Cowell on letters are all written by Tom King. And then we have a story that's by the regular creative team of the Wonder Woman title. So you got Tom King writing, Daniel Semper's the artist, Tomeo Mori on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. And as far as I know, this one's called Mothers and Daughters. This one is not a reprint. This is the first time this one's showing up here, and it flashes back and forth between Lizzie and Diana in sort of the Colosseum, if you will, or the arena on Themyscira, and then it flashes back to Hippolyta and Diana. And what they're doing in the story is when it's Hippolyta and Diana, Hippolyta's got a gun and Diana's got on the Wonder Woman bracelets. And Hippolyta's supposed to fire the gun, right? And if Diana's truly worthy, she'll be able to have the speed and the strength to, block the bullets with her bracers, like we've seen Wonder Woman do, tons of times. And then in the present day, you're seeing Diana as sort of the queen of the Amazons, and she's holding the gun, and it's Lizzie that she's supposed to be firing the gun at. And now, I mean, as a parent, let me just say, I fully understand what Hippolyta and Diana are going through here. Like, not that I would ever want to fire a gun at my kid, but there are times when you have to challenge your child and you worry about them failing, right? And in this case, if Lizzie fails, if Diana fails, they could die. They could die. They could be shot. So you kind of understand. So it's interesting story from Tom King here to compare, Lizzie to a younger Diana, to compare Diana to Hippolyta. And I thought that was a really strong story. The Daniel Sampere art, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, as it's been throughout his run. Really impressed with the art that we got. And then the last story is Trinity, also that same creative team. And this is the story that showed up as a backup in Wonder Woman 800, where we first met Lizzie for the first time and decided she's kind of unlikable because she is. And nothing I've seen of her, even in these backups, has made me change my mind about that. She definitely feels a little bit like a brat, even when she's, being watched by Damien and John. So I suppose it's supposed to come off as sort of, irascible or what have you, but she just comes across as a brat to me. Not quite to the level of Damien for unlikability, but it's the unlikability is definitely there. So anyway, what were your thoughts on this, Rocky? Again, I know we've read a lot of these stories previously.
Yeah. Well, just to add, there's only one news story, and that's the mothers and daughters one. And I don't know. I stand to be corrected on this, but maybe this is going to be in the backup of the next Wonder Woman issue, because all the backups were the backups to the main series of Wonder Woman to begin with. So maybe this mothers and daughters will actually be in the next issue of Wonder Woman, and the timing of this Trinity is just off. But in any event, I like that. That was definitely, it was my favorite story actually. That finally we get one of my this is one of my gripes. It's not a major deal, but all these stories about a young Trinity were all with John Kent, and all of them were with John Kent and Damian Wayne. And why? Well, I know why, and that's unfortunately the reason is I don't like the reason, but the reason is because Tom King wants to keep the relationship between Diana and Trinity close to his chest, and so we finally get Wonder Woman having some interaction with her older daughter in Mothers and Daughters. Finally, that's kind of what I'm more interested in seeing. I'm more interested in that than Trinity's relationship with John Kent and Damian Wayne, because they're 17, 18 years older than she is. So it's just they're not the same age. So it's not the same to me. And again, DC is sort of trying to cheat a bit, to saying it doesn't matter. And we got to. It's really kind of wonky what they're doing with the age gaps. But that's a. Let me just slap myself across the face and say, okay, I'm just nitpicking, because the stories are good. They're entertaining. Young Trinity is kind of likable and cute with John Kent and Damian Wayne in those first 2-3 stories, and it's pretty good. It's interesting that. And it's still unfortunate, the very first time we meet Trinity is when she's older and deeply unlikable. And one of the misfires that Tom King has is I think he's done a good job of showing Trinity when she's younger being cute and rambunctious, and a little bit of narcissism and overconfidence as a young as her mother, and wanting to be like the best Wonder Woman, and being inspired by her older John Kent and Damian Wayne, and teasing them as a young kid. And those stories were cute and they were funny and they were good. But then unfortunately she's 18, and then there's no evidence that Trinity has any requisite level of maturity in her very first appearance when she shows up older. And suddenly she developed the language, and sort of she comes across as immature, and has the type of dialogue that I would not associate with her, which I think is part of Tom King's struggles with Wonder Woman. In my view, is I don't like the voice he's given Diana. I don't like she does sound like she has an accent of some kind, which I just don't agree with. But again, minor stuff. We can still have some. That was the first one out of the gate. Trinity is still a work in progress as a character, and all it takes is one story to change one's point of view, because I'm already starting to like Trinity a little bit more, although I do hope that I hope that, ironically enough, that maybe Tom King just makes her a little bit more likable moving forward. If he's writing an older Trinity, he's done a good job with a child, but to have an adult speak with almost that childlike level of immaturity, it sort of borders on a sense of narcissism, and he's not done a great job of balancing that for the first appearance of Trinity. But maybe I nitpick, but we shall see.
I mean, I think you're 100% on it, right? Like, you expect kids, 5, 6, 7 years old, maybe 7's a little, but definitely 5 and 6, to be narcissistic, to be very self-centered. Like, they have a very small world.
Yeah.
That's just, you have to learn. But yeah, Trinity, when we saw her show up the first time, I figured she like somewhere between 16 and 20. I don't expect her to act like that. That's not okay to act like that when you're that age. It's just not. So yeah, that's where the unlikability comes in. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Alan Scott, Green Lantern, issue number 4 is from writer Tim Sheridan. Cian Tormey is the penciler. Jordi Tarragona, Ralph Fernandez, and John Livesey handle the inks. We've got Matt Herms on colors and Lucas Gattoni on letters. I wonder if Matt Herms ran out of red in this issue, because there is a lot of it. But anyway, give us your thoughts on this issue, Rock.
Well, this issue actually puts more meat on the skeleton of the origin of Alan Scott that we kind of guessed in the issues leading up to this, namely that his arch nemesis, this Crimson Flame character, is actually his lover. His first is someone that is this John Ladd that he was in love with, who he thought had died. And the revelation here, it's actually we get told from the perspective of the Crimson Flame from this Red Lantern himself, where he gives his perspective, and it's actually quite interesting. I thought this was well done. Now it is. Just by way of quick background here, this has been I've been fascinated by the divisiveness of some of the readership when it comes to this Alan Scott series. Some readers viscerally dislike it. I actually think you and I both were entertained by it, and I don't think it. I've never particularly cared about the intricate delicacy or nuance of every single detail of Alan Scott's origin as Green Lantern, but I think it works relatively well. I've been enjoying it. It deals with the concepts of death and resurrection and life, as epitomized by the Crimson Flame and of course the green flame of life, which is Alan Scott, and the fact that that these two have a connection, that they loved each other at one time. They loved each other at one time, but this John, I think John Ladd is his name. He was a Russian spy, and he saw Alan Scott was his target, and he seduced them, and it ends up, it's quite obvious that they fell in love, and that there's their love was sincere, and you can tell, but they're on different sides. They're on different sides. One was they're on different sides in a war, although Russia and the U.S. were on the same side in World War II. But then, of course, with the Cold War, that soon changed post World War II, and you could really see the dialogue here where the Red Lantern is describing how he feels, and is sort of he's trying to make a mockery, and he doesn't want to kill Alan Scott, but he wants to tell him that he's weak, and he makes some interesting comments, in particular that the reason why he feels he could easily defeat Alan Scott is because part of the power, one best way to access the power of the Crimson Flame, or the Red Flame, or the Green Flame, is it's emotionally based. And and it's similar in that respect, that whether it's the power of, whether it brings death or resurrection, emotion is what powers it. And so there's that. It's a different kind of emotional spectrum that exists in the Green Lanterns of Oa, or the United Planets, I guess. And so I thought that was fascinating, that there's still that emotional element. That is the tether and lies at the foundation of the Green Lantern's power and the Red Lantern's power. And I like how Alan Scott, he wasn't a victim here. He actually utilizes Red Lantern's feelings for him in order to actually steal his lantern by the end of it. And the dialogue, I thought, was very, very well done. I think I'm drawing a blank here. Sorry, Tim Sheridan. Yeah, Tim Sheridan. I thought the dialogue worked fairly well here. I thought he did a really good job. I thought that I found it believable in terms of him, the Red Lantern being a spy, and I thought it worked very well. I think Alan Scott, this has been an enjoyable series for me, and I still say again, given what his assignment was, again, he's given a very difficult task but I think he's done a good job of it, because this is one of those things where everyone, when people say, well, if you're going to tell me, if you're going to introduce LGBTQ to a story, tell me a good story. Don't ram the LGBTQ down my throat. Well, this is one where it's not rammed down your throat, but it's such an integral part of the character, you can't avoid addressing it. And because you can't avoid it, I think Tim Sheridan, in incorporating it into the origin, it just makes sense. It makes sense that Alan Scott would go through this. And when he introduces a love story on top of it, which I think has a narrative purpose. This isn't force feeding any sort of. This isn't woke for the sake of woke. This is good storytelling. It's entertaining. I think it's action packed. I think it's emotionally grounded. Both these characters love each other, but they're on different sides in a war, and they got to come to terms with each other. And they both have very complicated histories. And I just thought it was very well done. And I think to me it's growing the mythology of Alan, of the power of the Green Lantern, for Alan Scott's mythology, as opposed to the Oa of Earth One. And so this is unique. We're not dealing with the Green Lanterns of Oa or the United Planets. This is its own unique mythology of the Crimson Flame, the power of resurrection, of death, its own mythology, and I think it works very well. And it's just unfortunate that I think some people, I'll be blunt, I think some people are hiding behind a smoke screen that they just don't like the LGBTQ-ism of it all, and they're missing out on a good story because of that. And they're assuming facts that are simply not in evidence, because this is a good story.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That they're letting whatever the gender politics of it prevent themselves from having a good story. Like if the Red Lantern was female, right? Like I think everybody would be on board singing the praises. Whatever Alan Scott was heterosexual, they'd be like, oh, this is great, because you're right, to your point, right? That this is adding to the mythos and the origin of Alan Scott. We've said it. We've talked about it before. One of the first Golden Age characters, super popular back in the day. But you go back and read those stories, there's not much character development. There's not much drama. There's not much to Alan Scott. He's just random straight white superhero dude who saves the day. That's just the way that the stories were back then. In more innocent time, one could argue, or at least the things that weren't innocent were not so out in the open, and people were more conservative. So those were the stories that had to be told. Now we expect more sophistication from our stories. We expect more layers, and that's what you're seeing here. And again, Rocky's right. That when you talk about the Red Lantern, you talk about this Johnny Ladd character. I can't remember what his Russian name was, but I think Vlad, because I remember him saying, when he
that is
Johnny
Vlad,
Ladd rhymes with Vlad. But when you talk about what he did, right? Like he had a horrible upbringing or whatever. Grew up really poor. His dad was like a drunk and what have you. And so, yeah, fought in World War II for Russia, then became a spy, did what he had to do. Again, some hints of some homosexuality and what have you. He slept with the guy that basically was like the person that recruited for intelligence, and went to America and became the spy to get the Crimson Flame. Like it wasn't that he just came to spy and see what the army was up to. His specific mission was to get onto the boat where they were trying to capture the Crimson Flame. They had read about it. It was part of Russian myth and what have you, which makes a lot of sense. You think of Russia, you think red and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, when he did that, he's got some homosexual tendencies. It's not clear if he's bisexual or completely homosexual or what have you. But either way, he's able to go in and meet Alan Scott and, recognize in Alan himself, what he has this Johnny Ladd character has in himself. Like he recognizes somebody else who's attracted to somebody of the same sex, to the point where he even says, yeah, I'm not an engineer, but you were so blinded and dazzled from the second I walked in that, I could have you do basically whatever I wanted you to do. You didn't realize I didn't know what I was talking about. But what's interesting is he clearly is somebody who wanted to escape the situation he was in, the poverty he was in, and what have you, there does seem to be some loyalty to his country, but it's more, I think, a situation where, yeah, he wanted to better his situation. Yes, there's, as I said, some allegiance to country, but when he shows up later and he's relaying this story to Alan Scott, when he's telling him, hey, here's the actual truth. You didn't realize I was pulling the wool over your eyes to the extent I was. Rocky mentioned it. The language and the body language that Cian Torme gives us, the choice of vocabulary that Red Lantern is using, you can see that what he's saying sometimes doesn't match what he's feeling. He's like, it was all an act. I was just, pretending to love you so I could manipulate you and capture the Crimson Flame and what have you. There are some lingering feelings, right? They were really close for, a long time, close in a way that wasn't even, allowed when you're in the Army. That's the case in the Army, even now, even for opposite sex relationships. You can't be in the same unit and be in a relationship with somebody. That's just the way that it goes. It's against regulations. But anyway, that's really interesting, and it's adding those layers to Green Lantern. It's adding to his origin, because here's the thing: we're being told that this Red Lantern character is going to basically be a nemesis, and keep in mind, the story takes place in the past, right? So there's a lot of Red Lantern stories that other people could come and tell about these two. And what an interesting dynamic, right? Like, before they ever had their powers, they were lovers and really close, even though one was telling the truth about who they were and one was hiding who they were. And then they get the powers and now they're against each other. And you sort of see it at the end, like how much Alan is hurt by this, because he actually manages to kind of escape the little red energy bubble that the Red Lantern has around him, and grabs, he's out. And the reason he loses the battle is his ring runs out of charge. Alan Scott's ring runs out of charge. And when he manages to escape the bubble, take Johnny Ladd by surprise, he grabs the Red Lantern, and Red Lantern says, you're not going to be able to charge your ring off that. But he does, but Alan Scott does on that final page. And we even get a tease for the next issue, seeing the rage of Green Lantern. So even though these are magically based, these sort of powers that they have, and not like the modern Green Lanterns where it's, more emotion, I do find it interesting here. Red is anger. It is rage, right? When we talk about modern Green Lantern emotional spectrum. So it is interesting, right? Like, you think, well, maybe under normal circumstances, Alan Scott wouldn't have been able to charge his ring, but he's so hurt. He's so mad, right? Like, he truly loved Johnny Ladd, and come to find out all that was based on a lie. This guy was manipulating him. So again, I just think that's such an interesting dynamic, because this is the first reaction of Alan Scott to react like this when he discovers this. But again, there are years of stories that can go back and be told of Alan Scott and the Red Lantern going up against each other. At some point, do you think it flips, and Alan Scott is kind of like Johnny, where he's got those conflicting feelings? It's not so different than what Batman and Catwoman have, right? But before the Tom King stuff, when supposedly, now they're like soulmates or whatever crap is going on. But back in the day, when they know they shouldn't be attracted to each other, but they can't help it. And especially when, as I said, they have the history of the relationship before either of them had powers. It's just a really interesting dynamic. I can't wait to see what happens next. I had a feeling that I would like this, just based on the fact I'm a huge Alan Scott fan. And when I talked to Tim Sheridan a couple times after this was announced, about what he was going to do and what have you. But this is exceeding, like again, I thought I'd like it. This is I shouldn't even say exceeding any expectations I have. It's completely blown any expectations I had out of the water. Like, this is just so good. And the art's fantastic. The color work, like, this is just a really well put together comic. Fantastic storytelling, just off the charts great.
Yeah. I feel compelled to add to some of your comments. In particular, there's a scene here that I think just was so well done. There's a scene where the Red Lantern is done talking, and Alan Scott says to him, "Does she know that you're and Red Lantern screams, "A what?" And he's thinking like, "Does he know that you're a homosexual? Does she know you're homosexual?" And Alan Scott says, "No, a spy." And but you could see it was so brilliantly done because it shows that the Red Lantern is struggling with it himself. That both these lanterns are struggling with their sexuality. I mean, one's in Russia, which represses, obviously, we know the laws against homosexuality there. Alan Scott, 1940s America, not a great place if you want same-sex relationships. It's so well done, and what I find particularly interesting is that the Red Lantern here, Vlad or Johnny Lad, was sort of bragging to Alan Scott that you've repressed all your emotions. You got to be more open. That's how come I was able to defeat you, because I'm more open, and maybe implying that he accepts who he really is. But that's not entire. There's cracks in the armor of Vlad here. He also struggles with his sexuality, and while he might be all for Mother Russia, the fact remains is that Mother Russia hates who he is in terms of his sexuality, and that cannot be ignored. And we as readers know that that's underscoring these two characters. Both these characters are, you could think of as heroes in their own country, and yet in many ways are ostracized by the laws of their own country. They have a lot in common here, and they're former lovers. And I think it's so well done. And the fact that their emotions and how their emotional health is directly connected to the degree that they can manifest the power that they have is very interesting, because they're both in many ways accustomed to repressing their emotions where their sexuality is concerned. And let's face it, sexuality is a huge part of who we are. And again, I'm absolutely compelled to give compliments to Tim Sheridan here, because he took the assignment, he didn't back down from it, he promoted it. And if you don't like the story, you don't like the story. But don't tell me it's not a good one. This is an exceptionally well done story. He understands these characters. He understands the mythology of Green Lantern. And because it's very easy to see, if you read the original Green Lantern mythology, it's easy to twist it and tweak it to fit what the story that Tim Sheridan is saying. And so, again, I encourage anyone who is, maybe not afraid of the LGBTQism of the story to pick this up, because this is definitely elevating the character of Alan Scott. He's more interesting now than he's ever been, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this Red Lantern is way more interesting. I mean, they could have gone quite two-dimensional with him, because again, like you said, the conflict that he feels. Oh, I have a wife. Oh, does she know you're a spy? Well, then why are you, in that page you're referencing, that's when Alan sort of flips the table, if you will, because they're leaning back to back with that energy bubble between them, and you sort of feel the closeness. And they're feeling it too, right? At least that's what Alan wants the Red Lantern to think, right? Because just like Johnny Ladd or Vlad was doing and manipulating Alan Scott back then, now Alan's learned the lesson, right? And that's how he gets the Red Lantern close enough. They're like reaching out to touch hands, like a little Star Trek moment. You are and will always be my friend. And Alan punches him, and that's how he's able to get the lantern. Again, it's fantastic. It's such a great story. Highly recommended. Okay, up next we have another annual. It's Batman Superman World's Finest 2024 annual number 1. There's a few stories in here. We have a story of Fifth Dimensional Imps that's written by Mark Waid and Cullen Bunn. The art is by Edwin Galman, Lee Luffridge on colors, Steve Wands on letters. And then bear with me because I got to scroll through. There's like 3 or 4 stories in this issue. The next one is a Metamorpho story, The Ties That Bind. It's written by Dennis Culver. It's drawn by Travis Mercer. Colors by Andrew Dahlhaus. Letters by Steve Wands. And then the next story is a story about Queen Bee, or Bumblebee. Sorry, not Queen Bee. Bumblebee from the Titans. Stephanie Williams is the writer. Rosie Campy is the artist. Jody Blair on colors. Steve Wands on letters. And then the last story that we get, if it will scroll down for me, but it won't. It's a Challenges of the Unknown story. And it's written by Christopher Cantwell. The art is by, sorry, I'm just getting to the credits. Art is by Jorge Fornes. Lee Luffridge on colors and Steve Wands on letters. So the Imp story, I honestly could have done without. I'm not a big fan. Like sort of similar to what we've talked a lot about recently in terms of like Green Lantern family or Flash family or Superman family. What's so interesting about Mxyzptlk is how powerful he is, but he's singular. When you start saying, okay, well, there's Batmite, then there's Wonder Might for Wonder Woman, and there's Green Might for Green Arrow and Green Lantern, and there's Flash Might. Like it stops being so special and so fun and unique if they all have them. And so yeah, I just thought that was just kind of meh. It wasn't the best. The Metamorpho story I really really liked, which makes sense. You know, Dennis Culver, we were both big fans of his Doom Patrol run, and although Metamorpho's never been a member of the Doom Patrol, he is that sort of weird character who's not truly a superhero, more of an adventurer type. And so I thought that one was fantastic. I really enjoyed the art as well. The Bumblebee story was just okay. Just kind of a paint by the numbers. Didn't really stand out to me. Not really memorable. And then the Challenge of the Unknown story, Challengers of the Unknown. I enjoyed that one. I thought the art by Jorge Fornes was really, really good, but I'm a big fan of Jorge, so I'm not a surprise. But what I will say about that Challengers of the Unknown, it felt like the first chapter, like a little, not even necessarily the first chapter, but maybe like a tease, or maybe like a prologue. Like Christopher Cantwell's got a Challengers of the Unknown like 6-issue miniseries coming, and this is like a little tease to get you excited for that. I don't know if there's a Christopher Cantwell Challengers of the Unknown story coming, but I would definitely be on board for it, because this is the classic Challengers of the Unknown that actually act like the Challengers of the Unknown, that I can recognize as the Challengers of the Unknown, as opposed to whatever that was that we got in the
second issue of The Outsiders.
Yeah, the second issue of The Outsiders, where it was like they were, the way they acted, the way they talked, the way they looked, they were unrecognizable as the Challengers of the Unknown. I was like, I don't know who these people are or why they're acting the way they are. This is the true Challengers of the Unknown to me. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed that. I hope we get more of that. But overall, as an issue, I'm a little disappointed, right? Like again, if I had spent money on this, I'd be really disappointed. But because it just doesn't. Again, there's nothing to get me like really excited. Like, we look at what was done in Batman Offworld. Look at what was done in Alan Scott Green Lantern this week. Those are fantastic stories that feel fresh and original and exciting, and it has us curious what's going to come next. None of these, with the exception of the Challengers I've known, but again, it would be kind of a nostalgic thing, like revisiting the classic Challengers. It might not necessarily break new ground or whatever, but none of the rest of these, like if there was another chapter of any of this, I could not read it and be perfectly fine. You know what I mean? Like it was just underwhelming. It was just underwhelming. So I don't know. What do you think, Rocky?
Well, I generally agree with you, although I will say that the one saving grace that maybe these stories have is that I have more faith in Mark Waid that something is going to be built from these stories, because his world's finest stories generally, there's usually a reason for all of it, and usually it builds on something. And so one thing I like about Metamorpho, I like the Indiana Jones element of Metamorpho. It focuses on his relationship with his father, who he discovers in this cave, or he's looking for this hammer, this ancient mythological hammer. And his father is sort of a misguided Indiana Jones. But it's interesting that Metamorpho sort of lets his father get away. He doesn't even tell Stag, because Metamorpho, the love of his life. His father-in-law is Stag, and he who runs Stag Industries, and he hates Stag. He doesn't like his father-in-law, but he works for his father-in-law, but he doesn't even bother telling his father-in-law that his own father was in the cave and is going to end up with this hammer, this mythological hammer, and it's sort of it's sort of, that's it. That's the story. So it's our Mark Waid is building tension for the character by doubling down on the idea that Metamorpho has a dysfunctional relationship with his father-in-law and his own father, and he loves his girlfriend, but his father and father-in-law are complete dysfunction, to say the least. So I thought that was interesting. That might bear fruit in future stories. Mixiaz Patelik, the fifth dimensional imp. You know, I kept thinking watching this. I remember the Bizarro story in Action Comics by Jason Aaron when he said Bizarro when he gained all his magical powers. One of the things that he took is that he ripped out the tongue of a fifth dimensional imp, and I kept waiting I kept wondering which one of these imps did Bizarro rip the tongue out of, because I figured one of these. You know, I was kind of hoping maybe it was Flash because I found him annoying, but in any event. I don't. I sort of. I think it is kind of silly, but Mark Waid can get away with that here. I'm not really sure. There's a hint at a larger villain here. Who's the larger villain that's wreaking havoc on the fifth dimensional world? And all these imps are presumably escaping into Earth 1. Earth Designate Zero, and then if they're going to be followed by this fifth dimensional villain, who is this villain going to be? So it's almost guaranteed that that's going to lead. Well, in fact, it does. It even says to be continued in Batman Superman World's Finest number 25. So we're going to get more stories there. The Challengers of the Unknown story I thought was interesting for a number of reasons. I got the strong sense that clearly this is leading towards something, but what? Because not a heck of a lot happens. It just there's a multi-dimensional rip in space-time, and the Challenges of the Known are in the middle of it, and there's an explosion, and they all think that each other has died, but they haven't. They've survived on to face future challenges. Well, what exactly happened? It makes me wonder if this explosion, this rip in time, is related to what's going to be happening in DC's big summer event, which the rumored DC Ultimate Universe or this Ultimate whatever. Could this be the first hint of what DC summer event's going to be? What's happening with Challengers of the Unknown? I don't know, because really nothing happens. If you read it, there's a bunch of gobbledygook talk about dimensional rifts and these characters, and it's beautifully drawn, but what exactly is going on? There's just an explosion in space-time, somebody disappears, and then it ends. That's really it. And that's it. So it's kind of a mystery. So, but that's Challengers of the Unknown. But leave it to Mark Waid. You know what Challengers of the Unknown, if there's going to be a future multidimensional event in this summer for DC, I wouldn't surprise me if it involved Challengers of the Unknown. And as for the Bumblebee story, I thought it was cute. It reminded me a little bit of Iron Maiden over at Marvel there. Nice character. She's obviously very intelligent. What's that?
You said Iron Maiden. I think you meant Iron Heart.
Iron Heart, yes. Sorry,
Riri Williams.
Yeah, Riri Williams. Yeah. So, and that's fine. I don't mind it. She's actually seems to be a young, intelligent, young woman, and she's she helps people, and I guess we're going to get more of that character moving forward. It's one of the more undeveloped characters. It doesn't have a lot of history in the DC universe, and so Mark Waid focusing on her, I think, makes a lot of sense. So overall, not bad, but not a crucial issue, not a must collect annual by any stretch. But speculator alert! My guess is that Challengers of the Unknown story is hinting at something bigger.
Yeah, interesting to hear you talk about it. Yeah, Bumblebee, I think, like you're right, not really developed, has shown up more and known more for DC superhero girls than in the comics. But before you even mentioned this, rumor that's going around about DC having an Ultimate Universe like Marvel did back starting in 2000, you said something before that. You said, I trust Mark Waid; he always has a plan, and that got me thinking exactly what you said about the Ultimate Universe, right? And the reason that I thought of it is because, for those of you that don't know, Mark Waid is leaving Shazam. And, the speculation is it's because he's heavily involved in this Ultimate line that DC's going to do. And so, yeah, nothing really happened. Nobody's really going to care about this issue, except what if this is the first inklings of how that universe comes to be, like you mentioned it, right? So these stories seemingly on the surface aren't that related, right? Like I kind of thought as I'm reading them, I'm like, well, other than the Challengers of the Unknown, which they did actually show up in a previous issue, but we know Metamorpho was heavily involved in one of the storylines that we got previously, when he was expected of murdering Simon Stagg, and Bumblebee has shown up in the pages before as well. But for the most part, these stories, again, they really don't have much to do with one another. Yes, Simon Stagg in the Metamorpho story, and Bumblebee's going up against a company that's being dishonest about their business practices and what have you, that's a subsidiary of Stagg. And then you've got the Imps, and then you've got the Challengers of the Unknown, which, you know, you could look at those as being two sides of the same coin, with this really powerful villain, this villain that's so powerful that fifth dimensional imps are scared of him, and obviously the universe, the fabric of reality being ripped apart, you know, in the pages of that Challengers of the Unknown story. So yeah, what if all of this is, what if all four of these seemingly disparate stories are all related, and that villain in the fifth dimensional imp story is the one? Like, if anybody can like snap their fingers and restart a DC universe, or create, you know, an ultimate DC universe that is, for lack of a better word, different, you know, than any other, and not connected and not part of the DC multiverse, but just out on its own, and have it restart, and you get the origin of Superman, you get the origin of Batman. It would be a fifth dimensional imp, right? Or a villain that's so powerful that even fifth dimensional imps are scared of him. So that is interesting. I did not think of that until you said, Mark, I trust Mark Waid, he's got a plan. And yeah, it just, the dominoes started to fall. So yeah, I might have to pick up a copy of this, because it might turn out to be a very important issue.
That's
or
right.
we could be completely wrong, and it doesn't matter at all.
It's funny. I didn't even make the connection with the other stories, but you're absolutely 100% right. It could very well be, they could all be related. So now you've got me. We've sort of built on each other's rants or raves here, because now maybe I have to pick this up. I think it's on my pull list anyway, because I have Everything World's Finest with my retailer. So, but that's all right. It's all good. I mean, I got every issue of World's Finest now. I might as well get the annual. I'm a little bit of a completionist that way. So,
yeah, and the covers are fantastic, and the art for the most part is really good. So, all right, everybody, pick it up at your you know, if you think we're right, pick it up. If you think we're wrong, then I guess you could probably skip it. So, okay. Up next, we have the final issue of the event that's going on now. Titans Beastworld finale, written by Tom Taylor, Ivan Reis, Lucas Meyer, Eduardo Panseca on pencils. We've got Danny Mickey, Lucas Meyer, and Julio Ferreira on inks, Brad Anderson and Romulo Fajardo Jr. on the colors, and Wes Abbott on the letters. I am still not sure how I feel about the way this event wrapped up. What did you think, Rocky?
You know, I thought it was okay. I mean, look, I think a very common criticism, or at least a common commentary by more than one reviewer, particularly at the revelation of what happened at the end of last issue, that Raven's soul self is actually Dr. Hate, and it's the Dark Raven. It's the Raven, and the Dark Raven is actually the actual identity of Dr. Hate. That it does feel very much like it's what Tom Taylor hasn't been able to do, is make the Titans feel like they're elevated beyond the Justice League. It feels like a Titan story, and which I guess I can understand. And to his credit, I think in this issue, I do think that I like what he did with Nightwing. I like that Nightwing approaches the president of the United States, gets the president back on his side, the same president who has kissed the ring on the finger of the sovereign, the same president that was manipulated by Amanda Waller. He talked to the president, and he got the president on the side to allow the Titans to utilize the military resources to help initially take down and defeat and to start initially to destroy all the spores. And as Raven Raven is talking to her darker self, the Dark Raven, former Dr. Hate, it's clear that as these spores are dying, the Gar himself is losing his mind. I mean, and so they realize that they have to collect the spores, and because the more spores they kill, the more they are slowly killing any possibility of bringing the true consciousness and the mentality of Beast Boy back to resurrection, back to life. And I like how even Donna Troy is empowered with chromium and Kryptonian alloy because of Cyborg. So he's capable of defeating both Tamarinians as well as Kryptonians as they become infected by the spores and becoming more and more powerful. I like how all the other superheroes, including all the former members of the Justice League, I like how they listen to Nightwing. They respect the Titans. The Titans really have stepped up to the plate here. So I know I've talked about how I wish this wasn't necessarily such a Titan-centric story with Raven and her soul self being the bad guy. On the other hand, I want to give some props to Tom Taylor, because Tom Taylor very clearly said, look, they're not the Justice League, and the villains that the Titans have also become elevated. And these villains, the Titans villains, are just as deadly as Justice League villains. So Tom Taylor said, you know what? No, I'm going to elevate the villains of the Titans, because they're A-list villains, just like Titans are A-list heroes. And so rather than have them go up against traditional Justice League villains, he said, no, I'm going to elevate some of the villains of the Titans. That's what he did. Now, whether or not it's worked for everybody, including myself, because I have bitched about it in previous issues, okay? But in this issue, I began to appreciate it more, and I saw that there was, I could see the threat level here, because there's no question that at the end here, Amanda Waller's still a threat. The Titans ultimately, at the end of the day, win. They managed to regain the consciousness. They managed to resurrect Beast Boy. There's a large part of his limb that was ripped off by the Necrostar in the first issue that was banished to another, I think the Boomerang dimension, and they brought it back, and so they won the day. The threat of the Garo spores has been dealt with. The Garo spores has been brought up. They've all combined back together, along with the arm of the giant Garo that was lost in the Boomerang dimension, and so Beast Boy's consciousness has been brought back intact. And Raven, of course, at the end, I thought it was brilliantly done. Just when you think the story's over, Raven has defeated her darker soul self by imprisoning the former Dr. Hate into the red gem she has, the soul gem. And but then at the end, you discover that, oh my God, it's the dark Raven self is the one that's actually in control. And as we're leading into the big summer, eventually we're going to be going into the big summer event. How is this dark Raven going to be able to further manipulate the Titans leading into DC's big summer event and all those stories we just read in World's Finest, right? So it's, I'm intrigued by it, and the more I thought about it, the more I reflected on it, I'm going to give this story more of a chance, because there is still a part of me, I have to admit, that feels a little bit underwhelmed, because it's just Raven and the soul self again, Raven and her dark. We've seen this story 1,000 times. On the other hand, this is potentially different, and maybe it's not. Maybe Tom Taylor is just going to wrap this up quick, like he did the death of Wally West in the first issue of Titans. All of a sudden, that plot line just sort of like withered away, and it wasn't a big deal. Maybe this will happen here too. But overall, I still enjoyed this. I still enjoyed this series for what it was. Just for if I look at this as just 6 issues, and I avoid all the Star City and all the city collateral issues, which I didn't like. This was still a well-done, beautifully illustrated series, and I'm curious as to know where the Titans are going to be heading with this, and what the consequences are going to be now that the Titans have this darker Hate in their midst. And we should remember that this Dr. Hate, this dark Raven, is still working with Amanda Waller, and so Amanda Waller is still has plans to destroy all the heroes on the planet. And if the upper echelon heroes are the Titans, one can see how the Justice League might have to step up to the plate and help out the Titans and bring the Justice League back in all their glory, while at the same time, this fifth dimensional villain that we just read about in World's Finest is on the plate. So, I mean, you can kind of see the different pieces coming into play potentially. So as much as I can maybe criticize on this in the smaller aspects of it, the bigger picture is made maybe a little bit more exciting. At least that's what I tell myself because I want to be an optimist. So, what do you think?
Yeah, again, I have mixed feelings. I agree with you. We've talked a lot about the fact that when it comes to Raven stories, it seems like we always get the same old Raven story, right? Like it's her, it's Trigon, blah blah blah. Here we go again. At least this time it's not directly Trigon. It's her demonic self. We know influenced by Trigon, obviously being Trigon's daughter. But one of the things that is interesting about that, though, is if you want to talk about classic Raven stories and her, the other Titans being worried that she was becoming violent or she's succumbing and doing things that she shouldn't in terms of being a little too violent or being a little too rough with various villains or criminals at times. And it was the influence of her darker self, right, that would cause that to happen. So now you wonder, does it flip, right? So yeah, interesting dynamic. Tom Taylor has set up, clearly planting seeds for future Titan stories. The fact that the Titans don't know that, they think it's Raven, but really it's Raven's demonic half. But how much will Raven, in that Soul Stone, be able to influence her darker self? Will she be able to perhaps influence the darker self enough that the Titans will realize something's going on? So that's pretty interesting. I also really appreciated how Tom Taylor got Gar back together, right? Like it made total sense. Like, oh, Gar's going to end up being like mentally deficient, for lack of a better term, because you're destroying parts of him as you're destroying all these spores, and kind of a dramatic moment when they realize, hey, wait, stop destroying the spores. We got to capture him, because every time we're doing that, we're killing a little bit of Gar. We all know how much of a family the Titans are, so it kind of raised the stakes. But I do, again, not to play script doctor too much, but I do kind of think that would have been better had it been realized sooner, like maybe toward the end of last issue, and given a little more time to build up that drama, and maybe you could have had the angst that the Titans are feeling a little more clear. But again, I'm nitpicking. I think overall, I like the fact, hey, remember the Necrostar tore off a part of his arm. If we have a whole arm of him, that'll clearly allow us to maybe restore enough of his memories. And so all that really worked for me. That's what worked. What didn't work is the same old tired story, with Amanda Waller. And she, I've said it 100 times at this point. She's an out and out villain now. Enough with pretending she's a hero. She's got the gall to stand in front of the Hall of Justice. Like, I guess
Hall of Order. It's the Hall of Order now.
The Hall of Order now, right? But it's the Hall. It's the fucking Hall of Justice, man. I remember it from the damn DC Super Friends cartoon. That's, one could argue, is the whole reason I'm a comic book fan, because I remember watching that when I was like 3 years old, before I learned to read, and that was the reason why when I turned 4 and started to learn to read, I wanted to read Super Friends comics.
Yeah, and by the way, I just want to say something. In Bendis's run, Oliver Queen was the guy he owned. He bought the Hall of Justice. He built it. It was Oliver Queen that funded it because Bruce Wayne was broke or lost most of his billions. So I can't believe that Oliver Queen, who's looking for Amanda Waller, looking for Roy, you're going to have me believe that Oliver Queen sold the Hall of Justice? Because I'm pretty sure Oliver Queen owned it. That doesn't make sense to me.
It does. Yeah. None of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. So yeah, but let me play devil's advocate here and say, well, maybe kudos to DC for taking Amanda Waller down this path, right? Like, I despise her. Anybody who listens to this podcast knows how much I despise her. I want her to like there's no fate. There's no horrible fate that Amanda Waller could meet at this point that would be too cruel or would truly make me feel like she got what she deserved. Like, she's so far above and beyond. Like, she deserves like the worst fate imaginable at this point. But I guess kudos to DC for creating a character that I have that strong of emotion about, right? Like, it's worse if you're a publisher or if you're a creator of some kind, it's worse if people don't care at all, right? They don't like them. They don't like them. Like they're completely apathetic. That's worse, right? Because now it's like, well, you didn't give me anything to care about. So why should I care? So I guess we'll see how it all pans out for Waller in the end. No idea what might happen to her or what have you. I guess it's all to be determined. What's going to happen to Amanda Waller? Will she get her comeuppance, as it were? Will she not? No idea. Absolutely no idea. So again, we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. So ultimately, I think the event was a success, partly because of the artwork by Yvonne Reese, which is just fantastic, and the setup that it has going forward. I think we talked about that before, how we felt like one of the failures of Night Terrors is like there's nothing that's continuing on from it. Nobody's going to want to use Insomnia. Nobody really cares. It's just done and forgotten. As opposed to this, I think there's
consequences on this one.
Yeah. There's consequences. There's things to be explored and what have you. So, okay, last book we're going to talk about in detail. There's a ton of stories. It's the DC Power 2024 issue. I mentioned it at the top, celebrating Black History Month. We've got Enduring Farewells, which is Joe Mullen story, Sojourner. Enduring Farewells, N.K. Jemisin, writer, Jamal Campbell, artist. That was basically the team that gave us the Far Sector series to begin with. Then we've got Spice of Life by Cheryl Lynn Eaton. Asaya Fulmore is the artist, Ruth Redmond on colors. Pit Stop by Lamar Giles as the writer, Sean Damian Hill on pencils, Anthony Fowler Jr. on inks, DJ Chavez on colors. Pure Blackness by writer John Ridley. Edwin Galmon is the artist. Lost at Sea, Darren Bennett is the writer. Dennis Cowan pencils, Joe Stanisi on inks, Christopher Sotomayor on colors. The Session by Sean Martinborough as writer, Tony Atkins and Moritat as the artist. Then Natural Order by Aletha Martinez, writer and penciler. Mark Morales is the inker, Romulo Fajardo Jr. on colors. Interesting, I had no idea that Aletha Martinez was also an artist. We only know her as a writer, so that was interesting. Jumps, Shots, and Loose Watts by Jarrett Williams, the writer. Domo Stanton is the artist. Andrew Dahlhaus on colors. Fair Play by Greg Burnham as the writer. Genoa Lindsay is the artist. And then The Light That Shines with Brandon Thomas as writer and Kari Randolph and Serge Acuna as artists. So overall, I was, again, a little bit underwhelmed by this. It was nice to revisit the Far Sector and the city enduring. Fantastic art by Jamal Campbell. Great to have Joe Mullen, written by N.K. Jemisin, who I think is the best. I mean, she's kind of the first, so maybe that's why. But I like the way, the tone that she gives Joe, the vocabulary, like the voice that she gives her. I think it feels the most like Joe to me. And again, maybe that's just because she was the first one to write her. So I thought that story was fun. It was nice to go back. The second one, The Spice of Life, it tells a story about thunder and lightning. Jefferson Pierce's daughters. Again, it was okay. Nothing that was like really stand out about it. Probably the best aspect of it was the line work and the color work, which were pretty strong. And it did have Condiment King as the villain. So, I'm going to give it points for that because Condiment King is hilarious. Pit Stop is a Bloodwind story. I don't know enough about Bloodwind to really understand what's going on here. So that one had me feeling a little bit lost. But maybe that's on me. The John Ridley story, which is a Val Zod story, I found to be maybe the most interesting. I don't know if that's in a good way. And Val Zod himself, it's very, very meta. Val Zod's talking about the way he sees himself. He sees himself so differently than Superman does. And the fact that Val Zod calls himself Superman, but talks about not necessarily not wanting to help people, but he'd rather be alone. Like in this story, the reason it talks about blackness is he flies out to the center of the universe where nothing's alive, where he won't feel obligated or have any responsibilities to like help save anybody or what have you. That's so, in a way, antithetical to who Superman is. I've never known Val Zod to be written this way. So I thought it was really interesting. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I feel about it. But the art by Edwin Galmon was really fantastic. Um, and you know, if somebody else writes a Valzad story and they could explore this. There's a lot of potential here. The Lost at Sea story was a Black Manta story. Um, that was probably one of my least favorites. It was just a Black Manta story again, not really memorable. Dennis Cowan art though, so that was really fantastic. Then we have a Crispin Glover version of the Spectre story with Renee Montoya. Again, nothing really memorable about that one. Thought it was okay. I do like Crispin as the Spectre. I do enjoy that. And then we had a Natural Order, which is a Nubia story, which again, kudos to Aletha Martinez because really fantastic art. And again, I had no idea she was even an artist. But one Mixia's Pitalik appearance a week is enough, and having him show up twice. Again, that's not Aletha Martinez, but I was like, oh, man, really? More Mixia's Pitalik? Yeah, once is more than enough with that character. So anyway, that one was only okay. And then the Jarrett Williams Jump Shots and Loose Watts, which has Wallace West. I like this a lot better than what he's doing in Speed Force, but again, it wasn't really memorable. It was just okay, although I thought the art was really strong. And then the Mr. Terrific story, though, that comes up next, I did really enjoy that. I think Mr. Terrific is an underused character. I think in the hands of the right writer, he could be really, really interesting. So Greg Burnham did a fantastic job writing that one. And then the last one with the Signal, I gotta admit, man, I'm not a fan of Duke Thomas. He feels so redundant to me, like how many different sidekicks does Batman need? So that one was just kind of meh to me as well. So overall, I didn't feel like this DC Power issue this year was as strong as last year. So I don't know. What did you think, Rocky? Thoughts on any or all of these stories?
Uh, yeah, I actually like the end. I like that they have character bios at the end for Val Zod's, Christmas Allen as Black Spectre, Black Manta, Mr. Terrific, and the Signal, and because I think that's needed, because a lot of these characters they're not getting. Let's face it, they're not getting a lot of attention by DC, and I think by a certain way of looking at it, this is a little bit of a disservice to them by cramming them all into an anthology like this. It probably is not going to sell as well as it probably should. I also note that this is Black History Month, and promoting this as Black History Month and then suggesting it's LGBTQ because it almost seems to have rainbow colors, Black History Month. I think that that's all well and good, and all the power to them for that. But you don't need to. These characters are, these characters are pretty cool in their own right. I don't think they need the promotion of Black history or Pride, quite frankly. And I say that as a compliment.
I don't think that's the Pride. I don't think that's the Pride rainbow. I think that's an African flag colors.
Yeah, well, fair enough, whatever it is. But regardless, I do like these characters. I actually like the Black Manta story. And I always thought Christmas Allen made for a cool looking Spectre. But to my knowledge and continuity, Christmas Allen is not the Spectre anymore. He's not.
Yeah.
I don't know why that story was told. But again, it's fine. It's fine because you could say it's a story told in the past. But these characters would benefit more if as a reader, I feel that they're part of the DC universe. I felt that way with Lost at Sea, with the Black Manta story, which I actually enjoyed. The Nubia and Mixia's Pitalik story, I thought was by Lisa Martinez. I thought that was very off the wall and very creative. The idea that a fifth dimensional imp interacting with Greek gods, Greek mythology, I thought that had a lot of potential. I thought it was interesting. But again, there's no connective tissue to the mainstream universe. Not that there has to be. This is sort of an annuals week. It is an annuals week, and so some of these stories I didn't mind. Like I said, I like the Black Manta, I like the Nubian Mixias Patelik. I thought that was kind of interesting. Crispus Allen, it was kind of cool to see him again interacting with Renee Montoya. The Speed Force, Wallace West, that story. Speed Force, I think, has been a very hasn't. I've not been a fan of the series, and I'm not really a fan of this of that particular story myself in particular. But overall, it's not bad. You mentioned Val Zod. Uh, it's interesting the approach that John Ridley takes toward Val Zod. I wish we got more Val Zod stories. I loved Earth 2. I remember it's one of the Earth 2 was one of the series, and it was Earth 2, and then it became Earth 2 Society out of the New 52. I wasn't a fan of the New 52 in general, but Earth 2 was one of the series that I actually quite enjoyed. And Val Zod was a character that was he was always a very reluctant Superman, and when he finally stepped up to the plate, it was a very good Superman, but a reluctant one. And this is sort of in keeping with that characterization, but going down even a darker, almost a dystopian, like a depressing kind of view of him seeking some a higher degree of solitude. That it's one thing to have a fortress of solitude, it's one thing to fly into the deepest recesses of space to try to embrace it totally. So I would love to see more of an exploration, a character exploration of Val Zod. Give Val Zod his own series. James Gunn just recently confirmed that apparently there is still a Val Zod movie or a Black Superman movie in development. So who knows? But I would love to see Earth 2, an Earth 2 comic book series. But given that we don't know what the hell's going to DC is what we're moving toward after with DC Free Comic Book Day coming up. No one knows what the Free Comic Book Day is going to be for DC this year. What's going to be the big DC event? We don't know. But hopefully this DC power and these African American characters will have some degree of prominence in the storyline, and give maybe hand out some miniseries and explore them, because I think DC, I love when DC takes a chance on some of these characters and give them a good creative team, and let's have some fun.
Yeah, and it is sort of a limitation. I keep thinking back to what we were talking about. We want anthologies. Now we have them, and we're like, oh man, anthologies. Here's the thing: it's so tough because you get 8 to 10 pages, and it's just not enough, right? Like for the stories that you might not be that interested in, it's more than enough, right? Like 8 pages is enough to be kind of bored or just not really interested. And then for the stories that you want to know more about, like Val Zod, you feel like, oh man, you're just barely scratching the surface. So yeah, sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't, I guess. Anyway, that does it for the single issues that we're going to talk about this week. When it comes to collections, we've got a trade paperback, Volume 6 of Batman Urban Legends. This collects, it's 208 pages. Actually, it doesn't say what it collects, what issues it collects, but it's the final volume, so it must collect, the last few, probably 2, I'm guessing, 2 issues of Batman Urban Legends. And then the other book that's out this week is Waller versus Wildstorm hardcover, which was, it was kind of weird. It came out late, lost some momentum. We had some trouble with, not the worst thing I've ever read. Tried to give a little bit of like sort of a true political feel to the DC universe, along with Amanda Waller and some Wildstorm characters. So that collects the whole series, all 3 of the Black Label issues. So that does it for collections. All right, I guess it's time for Book of the Week. Rocky, what's your pick?
Well, I'm going to say that the ones that are in my top 3, and then I'll pick one that my top 3 would be Batman Offworld, Alan Scott Green Lantern, and I enjoyed Batman and Robin. Those are my top 3. But I'm going to have to give it to Batman Offworld, because I had an absolute blast with it. And Jason Aaron, it's so great to see him hitting it, doing such a good job with the Bizarro story with Superman, and coming to DC and starting off with a great Batman story and follow that up with a good Superman story. I mean, you couldn't ask for more, Bendis. Uh, but when you compare that, and I couldn't help but thinking this week how disastrous Bendis's premiere was when I compared to Jason Aaron. Bendis was criticized at Marvel. He comes to DC, and all our worst all the Marvelites were saying, "Oh, you guys don't understand," and all our worst fears were realized. And Jason Aaron, when he left Marvel, he sort of left it. He left it with some degree of criticism. I am told, because I never really followed much of it, but I enjoyed his indie work, and I'm so happy that he's doing such a great job with Batman Offworld. This is really almost, it feels like a new Batman. It feels fresh, and it feels like it's an unexplored aspect of Batman's origins. It's Batman, getting familiar with space and aliens, and it feels new, even though likely it probably isn't. But it feels new, and that's frankly the best that you can hope for in these modern day stories. So, what about yourself?
I'm so glad you picked Batman Offworld. I was over here in my head going, pick Batman, pick Batman, pick Batman. And the reason for that is, so my top two would be Batman Offworld and Alan Scott Green Lantern. Obviously, I didn't enjoy the Batman Robin annual. So yeah, I was kind of hoping you'd pick because I think I've chosen Batman Offworld every every time it's come out. I chose issue 1 as my book of the week. I chose issue 2 as my book of the week. And I was like, man, I think I gotta keep my streak up and pick Batman Offworld. It was so good. But I really want to pick Alan Scott Green Lantern. I think I may have chosen Alan Scott Green Lantern each week it's been out. I don't think they've come out in the same week previously. But you helped me out. You picked Batman Offworld, so that allows me to pick Alan Scott Green Lantern. But honestly, I'll officially pick Alan Scott Green Lantern. But really, it's a tie for me. Like, these were both really fantastic. And it's not just the stories and the fact that they feel fresh, like we talked about in our reviews, but the art on both of these books is so good. I would, and not in the same way. Like, the Batman Offworld art is so dynamic, and it shows the action and the Doug Mahnke. I don't think there's anybody any modern comic artist I can think of that draws aliens and alien creatures and what have you. Like, you see the metallic wolf on the cover. There's no modern comic artist that draws aliens as well as Doug Mahnke. He's just fantastic. Yeah. So the action, the kinetic feel, all the huge fight scenes, and even in those huge fight scenes with a bunch of different aliens and a bunch of different characters, it's never confusing. It never feels busy. It still feels very clean and very fresh, and it jumps off the page with the David Baron colors, and you get that sort of cosmic feel, right? Like, we talk about shows like Star Trek or Buck Rogers, where the future is very bright and shiny and clean. That's what we're getting here. It's not necessarily the future, but it's out in space, with advanced technology, and it feels very clean, at least until Batman starts punching and people are bleeding and things are breaking all over the place. But the line work's very clean and the art's fantastic. When you talk about the artwork for Green Lantern, you're talking about the art telling the story in a different way, through emotionality, through body language that conveys that emotion, through the more subtle color work that's done. Because as we talked about when we talked about the review, this issue was all about the relationship between Red Lantern and Green Lantern, right? Between the Crimson Flame and the Flame of Life that Alan Scott uses. And these two men who are conflicted, right? They're now enemies. There's animosity, but there was love previously, and they're fighting against those old feelings. And that's conveyed with the body language, with the choice of distance in the panel, like close up on the face to show emotion, pulling back to show body language and position and the way they're relating to each other. Not to say there wasn't action, because, they fought as well and had really cool scenes. Neither one of us mentioned Alan Scott going through walls, which was a thing back in the day, like one of his powers. And Tim Sheridan brought that here, and he talks about how it's actually time travel, and that's really interesting as well. So, these are both great books, both deserving of your attention and your comic dollar this week. So, definitely pick those two up, and based on our speculation, maybe pick up that World's Finest annual, maybe not. I don't know. It's up to you all. Anyway, anything else you have coming up this week that you want to tease, Rocky?
Well, you and I are probably we're going to review the first Ghost Machine compilation. Probably that'll probably come out today or tomorrow. And but beyond that, I don't think so. Well, actually, I'm going to be reviewing a book before the probably on Saturday. It's the inside. It's called Inside the Mind of Sherlock Holmes. It's very well done. It's a fantastic graphic novel. I forget the name of the artist and writer, but just does a phenomenal job and told and literally the art it tells it. It's an adventure told from Sherlock Holmes and the adventures of involving the scrupulous ticket, and it shows how there's like 100 clues that are contained in the comic, and that's how Sherlock Holmes figures out the clues and puts the clues together. And it's an immersive experience with the art, and you got to follow the art. The art is part of the story in a way that I've not seen done in a comic book in years, and I think it's one of the best graphic novels I've read in years. It's just exceptionally done. It's actually published originally in French and in France, and it came out in December, just before Christmas. So I want to give a shout out to that. That'll be coming out probably early next week.
Fantastic. Well, I should have an interview with Harley Quinn artist Chad Hardin. That's what he's most well known for. Coming out this week. He's got an art book coming out, so he's going to come on and talk about that. Obviously, the Spawn Daily continues. Complete chronology of Spawn. If you're curious about Spawn, I always have been. You can go check it out on the YouTube channel. And I think that's it for this week, but we'll see. You never know. Looking forward to that Ghost Machine conversation as well, which is just fantastic. So don't forget, everybody, if you're listening to us audio only, head over to YouTube. You can find the Spawn Daily on the Comic Source YouTube channel. If you're looking for Rocky's content, Comic Space Boom ! It's where all the DC spotlights are every week. If you always listen to the audio, man, check us out on YouTube when we do these DC spotlights, because you can see the art. You can see our smiling faces. It's really fantastic. You know what to do once you get there, no matter which channel it is. Subscribe, ring the notification bell, get involved in the comments. We love to chat with viewers and what have you. So we really appreciate that. Conversely, if you're checking us out on YouTube and you're curious about the other audio-only content from the Comic Source, just go to wherever you get your podcast, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We appreciate you joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.